Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Prime Time with Alex Stein. I'm your host, Alejandro Stein, and I'm just going to bring on our next guest. This guy is an best-selling author, award-winning author. Well, I don't know if he's won the awards. I guess he'll tell us. But this guy was connected with the Gambino crime family, had a life sentence, and actually got out after 8.5 years, and is just a very interesting guy. Let's bring him on. Louis Ferrante. Lou, how you doing?
Good. How you doing, Alex? Great to be here.
Well, it's such a pleasure. You know, my dad is a big fan of yours because it's so funny. He sent me your Vlad TV interview, and I watched your Vlad TV. And what's funny is that you were never really necessarily in the mafia. You just were kind of a gangster dealing with cars, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're doing business with the Gambino crime family. Is that how you became entangled with these guys?
Yeah, pretty yes and no. I was robbing cars. I had a chop shop. I supplied a lot of auto body collision shops with cars. And then I started hijacking trucks. And it started in a collision shop. I'm in a body shop and there's these huge toolboxes. And I go to the guy, wow, these things are big. He goes, yeah, they go for a lot of money too. They cost me about $4 or $5 grand for that, or $6 or $7 grand, whatever he said. And I go, you want, he goes, the truck comes a couple of times a week with all the tools on them. They even got boxes. I go, you want one? He goes, what do you mean? I go, a truck. You want a truck? I hijacked the truck and I gave it to him. So that's how it all started. I started hijacking trucks. I left the auto body collision, the stolen car stuff. And then eventually, I find myself in the middle of, I'm with the Gambino crime family. At some point, not too long after that, I'm taking down trucks left and right. I started doing heists. I was investigated for armored car heists. That was like one of the things me and my crew allegedly did a lot of. Yeah, the FBI came after us and they took us down. We used to take a tip and go anywhere in the country. And we had a tip in California. We flew out there and we got grabbed by the FBI in San Francisco the day before we were going to knock off the armored truck. And that was one of the crimes that was eventually on my indictment. But we didn't get to hit.
So you're saying it was kind of an inside job you got set up, because I was reading one of your informants that and told on you ended up being a coworker, a colleague at Discovery Network. Is that it? What a small world is that?
Well,
what is that?
Well, the main snitch against me, and by the way, that was one of, just to rewind a second, that was one of the armored car heists that we didn't do, but we allegedly did a lot of other ones. So they wanted us bad, the FBI, and they eventually put me away. But yeah, the main snitch against me was, he went into the witness protection program. He was a street guy his whole life, in and out of jail his whole life. When the FBI started offering people the witness protection program, and I was still on the street, and they would say to people, if you testify against Ferrante, we'll give you the program. I knew I was dead. I mean, how are you going to beat that? The government has unlimited resources. If they're willing to pay somebody's life for the rest of their life, they're willing to give them a check. You're done. So that was one of the guys. There was another guy who went on to become a television host for, I think, another channel or something. And I was the one. I hosted a show. Some of your viewers or listeners may have seen it, Inside the Gangster's Code, where I went around the world and I locked into the worst prisons around the world with the convicts. I locked in with them. I go in with nothing. I did time. I did 8.5 years in the penitentiary. Yeah. So, I mean, I got no problem locking in a prison with people.
So that was the whole show. You just went out to the worst prisons, and you actually kind of embedded yourself inside. And you did 150 episodes. How many episodes of this?
No. It was a limited series. We only did 5 episodes, but it did so well that they've replayed it probably hundreds, if not thousands of times, because you'll just be watching TV. It's several years ago. And there'll be like a double marathon where they'll just run the 5 episodes back to back for 10 hours, like a run.
And then all your friends are calling you, Louis, you're on the TV. It's funny how they do that, because I've worked in reality TV. That's kind of how I got to where I am today. I worked for a bunch of shows like Food Network, Cheaters. But Louis, your story's so interesting, and we have so many topics we got to talk about. But when it comes to you right now, you had a life sentence. You got out in 8.5 years, and then you became a best-selling author because your stories are so interesting. So before we even get into all your crazy stories, tell us, how does that transition crook to author? I mean, that has to be kind of an unorthodox transition.
Yes, I get locked up by the FBI. I get locked up by the Secret Service, and I get locked up by an organized crime task force state. So I got 3 indictments. I am facing the rest of my life in prison. And there were newspaper articles at the time that said I'm facing 125 years, 150 years. And what they did was they based it on how many, let's say you're charged with 10 crimes. Each crime is a 10-year statute. Each time a gun is used in the commission of crime, it's another 5-year statute. That's how they got to the 150. So if I went to trial, I would have got that. But me and my co-defendants decided we were going to plea. We knew we were guilty. So we said, look, let's see if we could get a plea. I had some of the best lawyers money could buy at the time. I hired the late William Kunstler. He was the radical civil rights attorney. I didn't know politics at the time.
Was he a white guy, black guy? What is his name? Say his name again.
He was a white guy, William Kunstler. But
okay. Well, I didn't know if he was doing civil rights. Maybe he was, you know.
He did a lot for. He used to ride the buses like in Montgomery with Martin Luther King. He represented Malcolm X, so he wasn't heavily involved in the civil rights era. But he also did the Attica riots. When the Attica riots went, all the prisoners took guards hostages. He went in there. They said, we don't want to talk to nobody but Kunstler. He went in there to negotiate. So at the time, he was my friend and attorney. He represented John Gotti too. So that's how I ended up with him. And at some point or another, I had Barry Slotnick briefly. And I went through 7 attorneys, and eventually I studied law and I reversed one of my cases from in prison. And that's how I got out in 8.5 years. So I got out early.
Prison library attorney. You know, they always hear about that. And you just figured it out. You filed appeals. You did it all yourself. What was the kind of process in that from inside the jail?
To study law and to learn law is a thing of its own. You know, people. I would have lawyers that would have to still, like, the judge. Even when I'm representing myself pro se, the judge would say, "Well, you still need an attorney on record to guide you." And the attorneys were so. I got to tell you that most of them, 99% of the attorneys, don't know jack shit about the law, and it's horrible. Because I'm telling you, this case so-and-so versus the United States, this case so-and-so. No, I never heard of that case. Well, you should. How are you representing us? So a lot of times.
Well, most attorneys are just barely making it. Everybody thinks all attorneys are super, wealthy guys. A lot of them are grinding it out, taking on more than they can chew.
And they get beat up by the system because there's really nothing you could do in the federal system. All the cards are stacked against you in the federal system. The state system, I know guys who've been in and out of the state their whole life. They do a deuce, they do a nickel, they do a dime, but they get out. The feds, you go away one time, they want to put your lights out for the rest of your life. And there's really not much you could do. You could fight, but I've seen people spend millions of dollars. I spent hundreds of thousands at the time. And I went through 7 attorneys. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars before I said, enough is enough. I'll study the law myself. And that's when I got out.
Well, how did you get out? Because you were convicted of doing very violent crimes. You were robbing armored trucks. Is that right? So you would take the money from these guys. But I did like that. You're very admirable that you would oftentimes, when you would hold these guys up, you would say, do you need anything out of the truck? Do you need your wallet?
Always.
Do you need this?
Always.
Yeah. So you did have some sort of class and respect.
A little bit of a code.
We had a violent criminal.
Yeah, we had a code. I mean, we never did anything against citizens. Like, it's like if we saw carjackers, forget about the police. We would have got you. We would have killed you. Yeah, I mean, if we saw like somebody,
if you saw somebody else jacking just a civilian, you knew it was another. Well, what if he was another Italian guy or something? You'd probably be like, oh, well, I don't want to get involved.
No, I don't care who it is. If you're doing something like that, we kept our neighborhoods clean. I'm going to tell you how crazy this is. All the things I went to jail for. One day, when I was a kid, 16, 17, we were in a stolen car, and I seen a kid come out of old lady come out of a bank, and a guy slashed at her, grabbed a pocketbook, and ran. I jumped out of a stolen car, tackled him, beat the shit out of him, and held him for the cops came, and then I left. That's because you don't do that to an old lady. What we were doing was different. If we're hijacking a truck, look, not to excuse my behavior. I paid for it. I deserved it. I believe in law and order. I have more friends today that are cops and agents. I understand the structure of society. I learned all that in prison. I had to learn it. I was very ignorant when I was young. But, however, as bad as we were, as soon as we hijacked the truck, we would say, look, we're just after the load. We don't want to hurt you. And is there anything in this truck that you even need? Like, oh, yeah, the guy would say, give me the pictures on the visor. That's my family. Stick them in my pocket, please. Like, these are the things that I'm not excusing my behavior. Once again, you traumatize somebody when you stick them up. But in my demented mind at the time, when I was young and ignorant, I was thinking that, well, we would never hurt people like regular people or an old lady, or if, you came into my neighborhood and you're looking to, rob a house, again, you do not have to worry about the cops. You have to worry about us. We don't rob houses. We're doing bigger things. So we thought of ourselves as bigger criminals. That's not to say we were. Once you go to jail, you realize you're in a cesspool with every crap that's, the lowest levels of society. And it's a hard wake-up call when you realize you belong there with them. Because you might go in there and go, I'm better than these guys. These guys were doing things that I would never do. But at some point I woke up and said, you know what? I was doing the same shit, just the different types of stuff. And you realize that you belong there. And that's a tough wake-up call.
I know you said you had so much guilt that you wanted a brick to fall on your head. But you know what it's funny about it, though, in a way, and this is not a victimless crime. You just said it. It's terrible to hold somebody up. But these Brinks trucks all have insurance. The guy doesn't, the guy, you know what I'm saying? The banks are insured. You're right. It's kind of like, does anybody care if a bank gets ripped off, really and truly? And I'm not advocating for bank robbery. Bank robbery is terrible. I'm just saying, you're not taking food off this guy's plate in a way.
Right. And we would literally tell the guy anything you need, we would, where do you want to get left? We would do everything we could. We all came from good homes, like dysfunctional in the sense.
Well, were you using drugs at all, Lou? I mean, because
I never did a drug in my life.
But why not be? But why did you want to start knocking off trucks? Because obviously you're a smart guy. You write books. You're not an imbecile.
You got to have the proper guidance when you're young. I came from a very loving family, but nobody went to school. Nobody ever put a book in my hands. I'm in jail. And it's the first time I'm playing cards with guys every day. And one day I went to the hole for something and I said, I want to learn something. I got nothing but time in here. And I asked a friend of mine, he was the caretaker of John Gotti's social club. He passed away about 1.5 years ago. I says, Georgie, do me a favor. I says, go to the bookstore, just pull books off the shelf and send me books. I want to read. And in
the hole? Oh, you're talking about it from outside.
Out of the hole. I was in jail. It's the first time I ever read a book was in jail. And then I started reading in jail and I fell in love with books. And now I'm reading 18 hours a day. And I'm going, wow, if somebody would have put a book in my hand when I was a kid, maybe I would have never hijacked a truck. Maybe I would have never ran a chop shop. It speaks to what
you would probably be a politician is what you'd probably be,
That's another criminal. Why would I be a politician?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Well, I'm just saying but that's other things, Lou. You're an admirable guy now. You've totally cleaned everything up. You're able to get out of jail. But you still have that Iggy, you still got it where you you know what I mean? You still have a little bit of crook in you, whether you want, you have to admit that a little bit because I
talked to a friend of mine. A friend of mine's very successful in Staten Island. He was with the Lucchese family. He told me when we were away, he said, I'm going to go straight too. We told each other, but a lot of guys say it and they don't. They go right back. Yeah. I got friends who told me they're going to go straight and they went back and caught a life sentence. So this guy happened to really go straight, and he owns about 12 buildings, big buildings now, and he's done really well. And we talk about it and we say, look, we still have the hustle in us, but we just do it lawfully. So you're right. It's still in you. That hustle is never going to leave you. That's sort of that way you are. I could walk the streets of the worst neighborhoods right now. Like when I did the Gangster Code series, when I'm locking into these prisons, I know these guys. I told them, look, I'm a journalist now. I'm going to ask you questions that are going to make you uncomfortable. Don't think I'm a rat. I never ratted on nobody, but I'm a journalist. I'm on the other side now. But we could still connect because I walked in your shoes. So there was one dude I went into the jungles of El Salvador. I was one of the first ones to ever lock in, if not the first.
But real quick, Lou, now those jails are all empty. Now you need to go do a series. The jails are nice. Now they're all up here.
Now you just go walk around Queens or Brooklyn. Yeah,
they're all empty now. Okay, so you're in an El Salvadorian jail. Tell us how terrible and what those criminals are and what it's like now that they're all up in Manhattan, New York.
Yeah. So you said that I kind of got the game in me, but I do it lawfully. I would never break the law again, ever. So I'm going through the prison and we got to go through the things, and I go to the girl with me. There's a girl, one of the producers. I go, look, you're staying outside. Do me a favor, give me cigarettes. And she goes, no, you're not allowed to smoke. They can't smoke cigarettes. I'll give me cigarettes. I said, it's a minor thing. It's like blowing a yellow. a yellow light.
Blowing a yellow, that's a code. What is blowing a yellow?
No, it's like, it's like you're not even running a red light. It's like
okay, yeah, blowing a yellow. Yeah, the red light. I get it. Yeah, it's in the gray area. It's a gray area.
Yeah, I'm not bringing them pot or heroin or cocaine. It's cigarettes.
And they're smoking cigarettes. They got every drug in that jail.
So
Let's not. Come on.
I stuck the cigarettes in the basket of my crotch. And then I go through the thing, I get in there, and I go to the guy, bring me to your cell, the guy who ran the prison. I go, bring me to your cell. So we get off, because we're being watched out here. We go to the cell.
Well, how are they getting footage of this? Are they piped into the security cams? You're telling me there's not a camera guy there with you kind of blowing your cover?
No, not when I did this with him. When we first got into the prison, this is before we're running the cameras. So you
go in there and just kind of meet and greet, kind of get a lay of the land. Is that what kind of the
guys don't want to be on camera right away? A lot of these guys.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So the head of the prison, he didn't want to just like go, yeah, bring the camera in. So he wanted to trust me. So we went back to the cell, and I reached into the basket of my crotch, and I took the cigarettes out and threw them on his bunk. And he goes, "You are a gangster," because only a gangster would know to do that. Like all the producers and directors, they would never know how important a cigarette is in jail. The importance of a cigarette. I knew a guy who would get his lawyer. He told his lawyer, he was a friend of mine. He was with one of the families in New York. He would tell his lawyer, "Listen to me, I'm going to strangle you on the visit unless you bring me in cigarettes, and I need a lighter." And the guy ended up sneaking it in his behind.
In his ass. You're telling he stuck it in his derriere.
Yeah. So, I got wild stories, but whatever the case is, you're right. It's still in you, but it's to use it lawfully, to use it for a good way. I thought by showing people, like a journalist, like an investigative reporter, show people this subculture, give them a view of the world they've never seen. And now they all see it because they're all here, like you said. But at that time when I did it, and I think the show actually, it was a limited series and it did phenomenal. The ratings were off the charts. The woman who commissioned it out of London ended up leaving Discovery Channel because she was so pissed that they didn't re-up it. And between me and you, they didn't re-up it because the people in Maryland had to make the decision, and they didn't want to see those people on television at the time.
I know they probably felt like it was exploitative of them, exploited, you're exploiting them. But this is the thing. These networks, like these reality show networks, they don't know a good show when they have one half the time, because like it's just, I don't know. It's just however it works. There's a reason why 90 Day Fiance works. It's very confusing how much good content actually makes it on the air and doesn't get renewed. But that's the reality TV game. So we got these books coming out. Borgata, this is a book that has already been out, and now you have the sequel to that, Clash of the Titans. So I didn't realize this. Borgata means family. So the casino in Atlantic City, that means family, even though we're taking all your money. So you can afford to give your family gifts.
Exactly. Go there with your family at least. Borgata, it's like, it's like the Borgata, the Brugada, the family, the Borgata. It's like, it's an old Italian word for like, almost like barrios, like a little close-knit group, area, neighborhood, Italians. And so it's the Borgata trilogy. The first,
but what's the book about? No, I got that. Yeah, we got to know. But I'm saying, what's this thing about?
The first volume did incredibly well. It sold really well. It's about the rise of the mafia beginning in Sicily, and it goes up and through the 1960 when Bobby Kennedy becomes Attorney General. So the whole first 100 years, from like 1860 Sicily to the immigrant wave of Italian Americans coming into this country, through Prohibition, through the stock market crash, through the Kefalva hearings, when the rackets hearings and stuff, and then it ends up where John F. Kennedy, the mob helps John F. Kennedy into power. When you're in the mob, by the way,
then who killed? Real quick, let's go, because now Trump just released 5 million.
I gotta tell you, Alex, I could talk about it for hours. That's the second book right here, Alex. I go through it. I tell you exactly. I'm not going to tell. Look, nobody's going to know. They may have who pulled the trigger, but I'm going to tell you exactly who the mastermind was, who did the operational plans, who was involved. And I got to tell you too, I make a strong case that it's not only the CIA, rogue agents of the CIA that most people know.
We know that. We know it just wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald. They say it was George Bush's.
Oswald may not have even fired a shot. And I cite that. I got them heavily sourced. This is real history, by the way.
Yeah, he was a patsy. Come on. I mean, there's just no way to think Lee Harvey Oswald, who went to Russia and then came back. That's just a farcical story.
Totally. And I got to tell you, J. Edgar Hoover knew that he was being set up, and he made those private statements off the record, knowing, and he knew when Ruby shot him, it was a mob hit. Hoover made these statements. It's all in my book. But I'm going to tell you right now.
Do you think the mob was actually the ones that shot him, or do you think it was some sort of government agent at the end of the day? Because they probably get the mob involved to kind of convolute it, right? You know, the mob.
No, exactly. It's exactly right. Well, they let it happen is one of the main things that. So, I mean, we'd need a lot of time to go deep, but
we can talk. I know you're busy, but I mean, we got some time. Unless you have to go, we can talk about it right now a little.
So you got Carlos Marcello in Louisiana. He's the Don of Louisiana, the boss. Okay. Carlos Marcello despises the Kennedys.
And he's the number one crime boss in New Orleans. Hated in the world. JFK.
Maybe in the world.
Maybe the world. And a lot of people, I went to LSU, but people don't realize organized crime, in New Orleans, it was ran like that. It was a big business there because of the shipping port and everything.
Because the politics. They owned all the politicians. Yeah. It's dirty politics. So Marcello owned the governor. He would back both governors. He funded both their campaigns. So no matter who won, he owned them. I mean, this was like totally.
Well, why didn't he like Kennedy? Because Kennedy was a socialist in his opinion, or what was it? He just
Kennedy, now there were eventually like other people, rogue agents of the CIA, who did believe that Kennedy was too left, and he was too easy on communism, and he wasn't doing the right thing with Cuba. When Cuba went,
because in my mind, well, the reason why I cut you off, I'm saying in my mind, you'd almost kind of want, if I was a gangster now, I kind of would want Kamala Harris to be in office because they don't give a damn about criminals. You know what I mean? If you're a gangster. Trump might, conservative might actually want to put people in jail. You think a liberal like JFK might be easy on crime.
I got to tell you, though, all of my ex-mob friends love Trump.
Yeah.
So
ex-mob, though. Ex-mob. I mean, now they're
ex-mob. They all love Trump. I haven't, I'm not talking much with the active guys. I saw some of them last year. We didn't get deep into that. It's hello and goodbye. I was in New York. So, it's really, I don't have much in common with them anymore. They're on the street still. But the ex-mob guys see things pretty clearly, and they see things, they know it's a Darwinian world, and they understand that. And they believe that Trump understands that it's a Darwinian world. So, I mean, that's like, it's a tough thing for people to understand when they have a lot of money, when they have an easy life, he embarrasses me. He said this, he said that. The mob don't give a shit what you say. It's what you do. And they feel like the guys I've talked to felt like the policies are right for the country. Now, what you said is right. The mob would they'd back Kamala or Trump, depending on who's going to be better for them. It's all self-serving. And which every election should be, by the way. People should vote for their interests. When they don't,
I agree. But now we're getting lost in the woods. So let's go back to the New Orleans gangster, though, that actually didn't like JFK and how he was involved.
You got Marcello, who's the head of Louisiana, maybe richest don in the country. He's doing over $1 billion a year. $1 billion a year. That's a lot of money. When Kennedy blows it at the Bay of Pigs. So for people who don't know,
with Cuba arming, trying to teach a Cuban militia to take over Cuba.
Castro he stopped elections. He became a Marxist, and he sided with the Soviet Union. And at that time, everybody who wanted a free society and felt they were being persecuted by Castro left and came through Miami into the United States. So out of those people, out of that major wave of immigrants from Cuba, they started these guys who wanted to go back, and the CIA started training people who could retake the island. So during the Bay of Pigs, they were promised by the CIA that we'll provide air cover, that we'll help you, just go in, hit the beaches, we'll take it from there. Kennedy said, no, I don't want to help them because I don't want to look like the United States is going to pushing around this small country. The people in his administration, the majority of people, not just the hawks, but even moderates, said, look, we can't let this go. We can't strand them on the beaches. We train them, and we can't have a communist 90 miles off the coast of Florida. It's going to spread like wildfire throughout Latin America. The Monroe Doctrine, get this guy out of there. Kennedy flakes. He don't do it. He blows it. Everybody's fed up with Kennedy after that. He gets another shot at the missile crisis. When they find missiles off the coast of Florida in Cuba, Khrushchev is putting them there with Castro's help. They're nuclear missiles 90 miles off the coast of Florida. The Joint Chiefs of Staff, a lot of people in Kennedy's administration go, we got to go in. This is the excuse. We won't look like bullies. We're doing it to defend America. No, there's the possibility of nuclear war. And they go, look, no, Khrushchev's bluffing. He ain't going to do nothing. We need to go in. We have every right. Forget about nuclear war. We can't risk nuclear missiles being there. So Kennedy makes a deal. He tells Khrushchev, look, we'll take the missiles out of Turkey. You take them out of Cuba. And I promise not to invade Cuba ever again. No Bay of Pigs. I won't do it. And then I won't do it in the future. I won't ever do it. Now, the Cuban exiles are beside themselves. So the Cuban exiles happen to be training in Louisiana and Florida, where Santo Trafficante is the closest Don to Carlos Marcello. Those two Dons. Santo Trafficante of Florida runs Florida. Carlos Marcello of Louisiana runs Louisiana. Both of them.
And that's where these exiles, these Cubans were training, for these clandestine operation to take over the Cuban government.
They were training in Guatemala. They had a camp there. They were training.
But it was a big deal that they were here in America doing it, on American soil in New Orleans.
There were camps set up in Florida and Louisiana. That's correct. And they were funded by Marcello and Trafficante. And why did Marcello and Trafficante fund the camps originally? Because they wanted the islands. They wanted the island back for gambling. The mob controlled gambling in Havana. It was a couple of $1 billion a year. They want the island back. So they're funding these guys. And when Kennedy says, I'm defunding the exiles and I will not invade Cuba, and now he goes after the exiles, he passes things then he tells his FBI, he tells his Justice Department through Bobby, who's his Attorney General, no more training, no more sabotage missions.
And the mafia is mad about this, so because they're getting kickbacks from the CIA, from the government. Well, that's why they're mad. Why are they mad that they're going to stop doing this? All
the moving parts are in this book, but I'm going to try to get it as best I can in a nutshell. They are trying to kill Castro, the mob is, with the help of the CIA. Asked the mob, can you help us kill Castro? So they're working close with the CIA. They're also funding the Cuban exiles. So they're in bed with the CIA and the Cuban exiles at the time. And now they despise Bobby Kennedy because Bobby Kennedy is threatening to destroy the mob, wipe them off the face of the earth. He thinks they are the quote unquote enemy within. And they're worse than any cancer this country ever had. And they're worse than any enemy outside, any foreign enemy. So he's saying they must be destroyed. And he's doing everything he can to destroy them. So at some point, they start talking the mob. And they start going, look, we got to clip Kennedy. He's just another guy. Look, the mob doesn't want to kill law enforcement officers or politicians, but I will say this, everybody's just another person. A 5-cent bullet could take anybody out. And when you're in the mob, you know that. So they didn't look at Kennedy like, oh, it's the president of the United States. He's a threat. He's a threat. He's got to go. So they're talking about it, and it's coming through Hoover's desk. It's passing Hoover's desk. Now, this is another moving part. Once again, I discuss it thoroughly in here. Another moving part is, why does Hoover listen to these threats that the mob's making on his illegal eavesdropping devices? Why are they coming across the transcripts?
And Hoover's the head of the FBI. Sorry, I'm just trying to keep people. Yes, he's the head. And so he knows that the mafia is planning on taking out JFK.
He knows full well. He's hearing it. He's hearing them saying it. We're going to take him out. And at one point, there's this guy, Jose Aleman, who was a exile from Cuba, who was dealing close with Santo Trafficante in Florida. And Aleman says to Trafficante, what do you think about Kennedy? He goes, he's going to get hit in November. This was months out. And he goes, he's getting clipped in November. And he goes, whoa, what do you mean? Hit how? And he goes, oh, it's already done. The deed is done. We got it all planned. He's taking him out. He goes to his FBI handlers. His FBI handlers running up the ladder and do nothing. Gets to Hoover's desk. Hoover does nothing. Why does Hoover do nothing? This is all in the book too. Because Hoover hated Bobby Kennedy. Hoover hated Bobby Kennedy. Despised Bobby Kennedy. Why did Hoover despise Bobby Kennedy? Bobby Kennedy gets in there. Hoover's the head of the FBI since Bobby was born. And now all of a sudden, Bobby gets in there and says, you know who I am? My brother's the president. You got to come through me. I'm the attorney general. FBI is under me. You answer to me. You don't go to the Oval Office whenever you want. And any FBI press releases, I want to look at them now. And he starts editing them. And then he starts going around and questioning agents. He's visiting them at satellite offices.
Well, Lou, I hate to cut you up, but if you think about it, isn't it? And this is how crazy I am, because now I believe in false flag attacks. But in a way, Hoover wants the mob so that the FBI has somebody to go after, right? They kind of need a rabbit to catch, right?
Yes and no. Not at the time. At the time,
Okay.
Hoover denied there was a mob, and I'll tell you why he denied there was a mob.
Okay.
Every time,
part of the mob? Was he part of the mob?
No, not at all. And he wasn't crooked, but he knew that any deep investigation into the mafia will eventually uncover a forensic accounting trail would go right to governors, congressmen, senators. And every time he looked into them, that's where the trail went. So he didn't want to go near it. What are you going to do? Yeah. Hoover knew. What am I going to surround the Capitol Rotunda, Bobby, and tell everybody to come out with their hands up? Where do you want this to go? If I start,
and that's why they have the Congress has a special slush fund when they deal with these lawsuits and stuff, so the public doesn't know if they have a sexual allegation. That's why with this Matt Gaetz stuff, they really didn't want to release, because there's a bunch of other incidences that they didn't release where it didn't raise to the level of a crime, so it wasn't necessary. But it's just funny how all of this organized crime is connected to these politicians, and even the head of the FBI, Hoover, does not want to put the thumb on the button and expose everybody, because exposing the crooks expose politicians.
And Hoover's attitude was, how would you like me to go after your father, who was in bed with the mob, Joe Kennedy Sr.? Joe Kennedy Sr., I don't just quote mobsters who said they worked with Joe Kennedy Sr. I quote Kennedy clan members, Kennedy family members, Kennedy friends, judges who were appointed by Kennedy. They said Joe Sr. was dirty and in bed with the mob. It's all in my book. It's all sourced. So now you got Hoover going, I don't want to go near the mob. Bobby's going, I'm going to drag you kicking and screaming into these investigations. You're going to do what I tell you to do. I'm the attorney general. And you're going to listen to me. You don't talk to the president anymore. Now he tells Hoover, he starts telling everybody around Hoover, rather, I'm going to retire him in Jack's second term. He's done. He's out. And not only that, one of Hoover's assistant directors says that Bobby went out of his way to try to prove that Hoover was a homosexual and smear him, which was unacceptable in the 1960s.
I know. So he felt Bobby was trying to expose him for being a homosexual.
It's all in here.
Wow. Everybody needs to go get this book. Morgana, I'll put a link in the description. I don't have it in there yet, but I will as soon as we're done here. And if anybody has any questions you want to ask Lou, guys, send a super chat and we'll go through those before. So, okay. So now this is getting deep. I want to hear the end of the story. If you don't have to go, I'd like to finish.
No, I'm good.
Yeah. So right now, you're telling me Hoover has a vendetta against the Kennedy family, especially Bobby Kennedy, because he feels like Bobby Kennedy's going to expose him for being a homosexual. Right. So then, where do we go?
His whole life is on the line now. He's a power-hungry guy who's read his life is going to be done if Kennedy gets a second term. That explains, in my eyes, why Hoover's reading these transcripts and listening to these tapes and going, I didn't hear nothing. I didn't see nothing. He's not participating in the coup, but he is.
It's lying by omission. He's not guilty because he's just kind of not stopping.
I'm not reporting this to the Secret Service. I'm not reporting it to the FBI. So I go deep too into who the main conspirators were. So at some point, Marcello starts floating around the idea of putting $1 million on Kennedy's head. Why Jack Kennedy when he hated Bobby?
And this $1 million in 1963 is like 10 million now, 20 million now.
And let me tell you, Marcello, he was making $1 billion a year. So even if he went for 10 or 20 or 100 million, he wouldn't have cared. So he could have said, look, if there's 3 shooters and it's a crossfire, I'll give you 10 million apiece. It was nothing for him. So let's get that straight first. And he did not care. His life was on the line. So if you had $1 billion a year company that Bobby Kennedy's threatening to destroy, $1 billion in 1960, how many billions is that today? Right? And
100. Yeah, a lot.
Yeah. The hitman, and you insulate yourself. So he's floating around this idea, and people are talking about it, and they're reporting it, going, Marcello's got a price on John Kennedy's head. Why Marcello chose to kill John Kennedy also is because, and I want to get to the government's part in this too, but why he chose to kill John Kennedy was because he said at one point or another, he said to a bunch of friends, and this was reported later too, he says, look, if you cut the tail off the dog's still going to bite you. You got to cut the head off and the tail and head die together, meaning John Kennedy is the head. Bobby's the tail. He goes, if I kill Bobby, John will send the Marines out. He'll send out the National Guard. What am I going to do? He goes, but if I kill John, Bobby is deactivated overnight. And that's
That's a mob genius, dude. That's a
Absolutely
genius.
right.
You cut off the problem, because then the guy that's going to get back at you. I mean, that's kind of
Absolutely right.
sick. That's almost like if you're gonna, you know how you always hear about the gangster story where a guy takes out a gangster and then the sons comes back for vengeance, on the
Of course.
gangster that took out his
Yeah.
dad. But it was like, it would be like taking out the kid before you take out the dad, knowing that
Yeah.
the kid can't take. That's crazy. So
Well,
they
that's
took
why
out
I
the
think
bigger problem first with
that's why.
JFK.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So
Well, you know how we know it's a mob deal, though? What is Jack Ruby's involvement? He shoots him in there and dies in prison. So sorry to cut you off. There's so
That's a
much
great
with it.
question. So Ruby, right? As soon as Ruby shoots Oswald, everybody knows it's the first mob hit televised on television. Other than the Zapruder film, which was Kennedy. But when he shoots Oswald, Hoover right away goes, "It's a mob hit." He's silencing a witness, obviously, but he can't. His covers. He has a completely different take with the Warren Commission, which he was in charge of the Warren Commission, which was that it was the Warren Commission by executive order was supposed to, Chief Justice Earl Warren was the head of the Supreme Court in charge of the Warren Commission. They're supposed to look into the Kennedy assassination, but they're being manipulated by Hoover, who's controlling what they see and what evidence they're allowed to see. And he also starts putting together dirty dossiers on all of them in case somebody gets a little out of hand and they're not going along with the theme. So he tells them, this is my conclusion, day one, within 24 hours of Oswald being killed. Hoover said he's a lone nut, and then Ruby was another lone nut. Everybody's a lone nut. So I said in the book, I go, if somebody shot Ruby, he would have been a lone nut too, and the lone nuts would have just kept piling up at Parkland Hospital. Like how many lone nuts? But
that's the best way to tie up a loose end. He was just a lonely guy. Isn't that the only way to tie it up, really?
Total crap. So now, just so you know, too, the government had a hand in this too. So don't forget, the rogue agents of the CIA who hate the Kennedys feel like it was treasonous what he did in the Bay of Pigs and what he did during the missile crisis. They hate him. They hate Jack, despise him. The Cuban exiles hate Jack, the Kennedys, and the mob hates the Kennedys. So those are your three conspirators. How does the government get involved? I'm going to tell you right now, and everybody always leaves this out. And I outlined it in this book. You must read it. In the end, and this is going to ring true for a lot of people who are listening right now and see what just happened, because this book was handed in before anybody took a shot at Trump, okay? The Secret Service, one thing after another that they did, Kennedy would be alive if they didn't do it. First, they said, we're taking the bubble top off the limousine. And then they tried to say, well, Kennedy wanted it off. The weather was nice. Then they said, instead of 8 motorcycles around the limousine, we only want 4 motorcycles. Put the other 4 in the back. Then they said, why do we know? What happened to the 8 motorcycles? No, 4 is enough. Then there were runners. There were steel steps on the back of the limousines, one on each, the left fender and the right fender. 2 big Secret Service agents would hold on to them, stick their feet in them like stirrups, and hold on to the hood. They had bars they could hold on to too. So they were right there on the hood of the car with Kennedy. They said, we don't want the agents on the back. This is all coming from Washington. All coming from Washington. We don't want the agents on the back. Get them off the back of the limousine. Then the press car, the press vehicle, was supposed to be 2 cars behind Kennedy. They bumped them all the way to the end of the motorcade. All the guys who snap pictures really well. They go, what are you doing with us? We want to film the president. We want to take, no, you don't film nobody. We're putting you all the way in the back. If these changes didn't happen, and I could go on one after another, by the Secret Service.
The route, it was unusual that they even took that route that day. It didn't make sense.
There's a change. The motorcade was never supposed to turn on Elm Street. They stopped the security detail before Elm Street. No Dallas police officers. They said, no, you're going to stop the security crowd detail before Elm Street. Then the last minute change was you're going to make a quick right and a left on Elm Street, bringing the car down to a crawl in the middle of a canyon of buildings. And let me tell you something else, and I hope it comes out. That was a crossfire. And they have a guy, David Ferry, who was in bed with Marcello. Marcello paid him. And this guy was the master intriguer. The Cubans called him the master intriguer. He loved intrigue. And he said long before Kennedy was shot, we're going to kill Kennedy, and we're going to do it by a triangulation of fire. That's the way to do it. You got to bring him into a kill zone and you got to hit them from 3 different places. And we all know
Well, the head went back and to the left. I mean, it doesn't make sense the direction that he got shot.
How long are we going to be lied to? Are we idiots? You watch the Zapruder film and it's just what you said. How long are we going to nod along and go, oh yeah, Oswald did it, but his head went back into the left?
I mean, you could see. I mean, it was just so clear the direction of the momentum of that.
And see if it comes back and hits you in the face. You might get a little splatter, but the thing, whatever you shoot's going that way.
I know. I mean,
that guy went back. You don't shoot people and they come flying at you. The guy got shot from the front, from the grassy knoll, rather. I'm sorry, the grassy knoll. There was a shot from the back, too. Someone shot from the back because there's other shots. He got shot through the throat. There was a shot that missed. Connolly got hit. They tried to say the magic bullet. Connolly told the Warren Commission.
There was more shots. It's just obvious that there's more shots in this. And this is before the Zapruder film, which came out, I believe, 6 years later.
Exactly.
There are no cell phones. This is all just hearsay of the 200 people that were nearby at that, because there was more people there, but in that little area, I don't even think there was more than 100 or 200 people.
Alex, 77 people ran towards the grassy knoll. You think that they would run towards the grassy knoll because the bullet came from the... They know something came from there. They all looked that way and ran that way to see. Yeah. And there was also a motorcycle cop, Officer Hodges. Officer Hodges was behind Kennedy this way. So the grassy knoll is there. Kennedy's getting shot, and Hodges is right behind him on a motorcycle. His whole face was splattered with blood. How does that happen if the shot came from behind? So now here's another thing too. You could the magic bullet, 888-page Warren Commission report, falls apart on one premise. If this doesn't hold, you could take the whole thing and throw it in the garbage. It's the biggest work of fiction. And that is that the magic bullet went through Kennedy's throat, went down into Connolly's rib, back up again, through his lung, back out, in his wrist, through his wrist, out the wrist, and then somehow ends up clean as a whistle, like it was just purchased from a gun store in Parkland Hospital. Now, I've seen people shot, and I've seen bullets from people getting shot. They do not look clean. They got blood, guts, and hair on them. Now, let me tell you something. That bullet, Connolly said, I will never believe it. I was in that car. I was hit with a bullet. You can never run enough tests. They're all phony, those tests. You can never run enough to make me believe it. If without that magic bullet, there's too many bullets fired in the space of too short a time for Oswald to fire all the shots. If he even fired a shot. If he even fired
with his cheap rifle. No, I mean, I don't even know if he did. Exactly. I mean, well, we know that he actually did fire a shot when he killed William H. Buckley, or who when he killed the Dallas.
You don't know that either.
Well, you're right. You're right. And I'm a conspiracy theorist. I'm not saying that's official, but in a way, if he did think that he was a patsy and he's an ex-military, maybe that is when he would start trying to shoot his way out of it, because he's like, what the hell? I didn't shoot the president this time.
If you're talking about Tippit, J.D. Tippit.
I mean, J.D. Tippit. I said Buckley Tippit.
No, that's okay. So J.D. Tippit, I make an argument in this book that something was up with J.D. Tippit. We know it. The whole Dallas Police Department was crooked, first of all. They were all undertaking the mob. And Ruby's big role in this was Ruby was the chief liaison between the mob and the cops. Now, everybody knew Ruby was tight with the cops, and everybody knew Ruby was tight with the Dallas Mafia, who answered to Carlos Marcello. Dallas was a satellite of Carlos Marcello's Louisiana.
Well, of course, that would make sense if he's the biggest in that region. I mean, and Dallas, all the railroads went through Dallas. That's why the state fair is here. That's why it was an important, regional area.
Totally. So now you got Ruby is the chief liaison between the cops and the mob. Okay, where were we for a second? I bounced.
Wait, no, we're at the Marcello family and his connection with Ruby, Jack Ruby's connection with being the liaison for the police department and the mob. And how they're typically under Marcello's.
J.D. Tippit.
Yeah, J.D. Tippit.
J.D. Tippit was dirty. I have a feeling, but it's quite possible that they were going to get rid of Oswald. If I was doing it, knowing how the mob works, right? I was in the mob. I know how the mob works. I know how they do things. Okay. And I was in, just so your listeners know, John Gotti's oldest brother was Peter Gotti. He was a captain in the family. He was the boss for a while after John Gotti went away and then died. And then Pete went away. But he was the boss. I was in Pete Gotti's house every single day for years. Okay, in and out of his house.
That's a pretty big deal for the people that are watching. That's how you preface that. I mean, John Gotti was the godfather of the Teflon. I mean, Teflon Don. John Gotti was the number one guy.
And
this is his brother Peter. And
Right.
how'd you get close with Peter? Just from
I got
knocking off
close.
trucks?
I got close. I became close with a lot of people, a lot of different people. I eventually got close with different guys through their sons. Joe Butch Carreo, his stepson was a dear friend of mine. Jackie Nose's stepson was a dear friend of mine. And Pete Gotti's son was a dear friend of mine at the time, and that's how I got close with Pete Gotti.
So you knew Pete's son. And let's be real, the Gotti family reputation, even the younger ones, the grandchildren, they've gotten wilder. They get wilder, it seems
kids,
like.
I don't know. All those kids,
Yeah.
Those kids were little kids running around when I went away. I went to jail in 1994. They were all 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, these kids. Some weren't even born. So this is like when I see them on TV, all those different kids, I don't know them. But I did know
they all have reality shows now. I mean, that's the opposite. John probably wouldn't have liked that, I don't think. Well, he was alive, I guess. He was alive during it.
I don't know if he was alive or not, but John Sr. was a stickler for the life. He was. But I like the Gottis, by the way, too. I got along really well.
No shade. No, and I like the Gottis. I like the reality show. I'm just saying they're all famous now for having some trials and tribulations, to say the least.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, they took Pete Gotti took my back whenever I had a beef on the street or something. I could have been dead. Who knows? He took my back. He didn't ask questions. I got nothing but respect for Pete. And he's gone now. Rest his soul. He's dead. And even the kid, we had a good relationship too. Richie Gotti was another one of John's brothers. I was close with him. He was a good guy. Richie's son, Richie.
Was Richie Gotti the crazy guy in jail with you? The guy that was insane? The guy that ate a guy's brain?
Richie Gotti. Oh no, that's Richie Pagliarulo. No, he was with the family. Yeah, Richie was a little spins out.
We'll get into that, Richie. I want to end the thing with that, but if you don't have to go, this interview is so interesting. If you can talk for a little bit longer.
I want to explain this. So basically, J.D. Tippit, I think what they wanted to do, I would have said, look, we got to get rid of Oswald, make it look like he killed the president, then we clip him on his way out, and we give him the body, or he disappears. And so it looks like Oswald did it, and then he's dead. That's it. This trail's dead. Right? Like if I send you, let's say, Alex, I say, do me a favor, go clip, I can't even want to say a name, right? You could get sued. Go clip some guy. And then XY, go clip him. And then after you clip him, I kill you, right? That's it. It's done. There's you can't.
Well, isn't that what they do? But don't they do that? I mean, don't they do?
They do it all the time. So a guy might clip 3 or 4 guys, 5 or 6 guys, and then they clip the guy, and that's it. All those murders are done. Whoever, nobody's going to know. So
that was on Breaking Bad too. That happened. You have the hitman, and then you take out the hitman. But yes, sorry. Yeah.
So Oswald, I think that the plan was to clip Oswald. I write about it in the book, and I think they wanted it to look like that's why Oswald was fishing for a Cuban visa before, leading up to it. Now somebody was impersonating him in Mexico City. I'm not going to say to you, oh, I know he wasn't in Mexico City. J. Edgar Hoover said he wasn't in Mexico City. J. Edgar Hoover looked at the tapes of the guy in Mexico City who was impersonating Oswald and the photos of him, and called up the head of the Secret Service, the head of the CIA, and said, look, that's not Oswald. My agents who know Oswald said that's not him. So Hoover didn't even believe that it was Oswald in Mexico City trying to get a Cuban visa. So why did they want it to make it look like Oswald is fishing around for a Cuban visa? I think they were going to do this. Oswald leaves. Oswald supposedly looks like he killed Kennedy, or maybe he fired a shot, but I don't think he did. I don't think he fired even a shot. They clip him, and now it looks like and if you get rid of the body, by the way, if you clip him on the street, that's one possibility. They clip him on the street, and then nobody could talk. He shot the president. He's dead on the street. Maybe J.D. Tippit was supposed to shoot him. He resisted arrest. He resisted arrest, maybe. Maybe they were going to go, look, I pulled the gun on Oswald. I told him freeze, and I had to shoot him. Maybe Oswald.
And then Tippit would have been a hero. Then Tippit would have been, right. I mean, even,
we would have to praise J.D. Tippit like we praise a bunch of other imbeciles that are really the nefarious people. Okay? Mm-hmm. Not we, but a lot of people still praise bad people in this country.
Oh, yeah. Our whole Department of Justice, Department of Injustice is what it is.
Times. So now, that's one theory I have. Maybe they were going to clip him on the street. He shot Kennedy. Now he's dead. He got taken out by a police officer. Or if they get rid of the body, let's say Ruby was supposed to get rid of the body, and it looks like he went to Cuba because he was trying to get into Cuba. It looks like he fled to Cuba. Then there's a reason to invade Cuba because John Kennedy's assassin is in Cuba. and Castro's hiding them. And let's say they say to Castro, cough him up. And he goes, cough up who? I don't have him. He's lying. He's got him. Let's go in. So there's a few theories that I've put out there that I don't know.
What about this, Lou? You ever heard of Operation Northwoods? You had to have heard of that. You know, where this was a declassified CIA plan where they were going to hijack planes and make it seem like Cuban nationals did it.
Yes.
They were going to fly it into buildings in Miami, but they ended up, Kennedy said, no, that's too crazy. And then now I don't know how far you go, Lou, and I know you're from New York. Is that correct? You're from New York, you know, so you might take offense to this. A lot of New Yorkers do when I say this, but I believe 9/11 was perpetrated by people within our government and foreign governments. I feel like it's too. These guys had visas. It doesn't make sense. A lot of
this way out. Even if they didn't plan 9/11,
they knew about it. I'm saying they knew these terrorists were doing it. You know?
They could have did what Hoover did, right? Think about that. What you just said. What did Hoover do? Hoover has all this information coming past his desk, and he's just not acting on it because he wants to see the outcome. So if they had the information, but they want that outcome, all you got to do is ignore it. Because there's a few things where some people didn't get on the right plane. And, you know, there's a few things where maybe something.
There's just weird anomalies, too. And you see who benefits from it at the end of the day. And then, you know, the building had irreparable asbestos. And it was almost kind of
for 20 years since.
Because of it. That for me was the biggest red flag, is that we've gone over there and Lou, listen, I don't know all your politics, but they've brainwashed us into hating terrorism, and they've framed, you know, these terrorists as these Middle Eastern guys, and it's just not true. Edward Snowden revealed that they were bombing weddings and funerals, and you know, so it's not. They sold us a lie about weapons of mass destruction. They told us that we're a threat of terrorism, but somehow that affects us in Afghanistan. A guy in a cave was able to do the most masterful terroristic plan of all time and take out the world. It doesn't make sense, and it's radicalized us to hate certain people, and I hate that because it worked to a T. I believe.
With the mass destruction, weapons of mass destruction, I watched that, so I knew that they weren't there, and I'll tell you how. They kept trying to sell it to the American public, and Colin Powell was being dragged along. He didn't want to go for it. And then at some point or another, they kept trying something new. I'm watching it and I'm going, oh man, they got to sell it to us before they did it. They don't care anymore. They used to do this. They used to care. They used to have to sell it to us. So at some point they come up with weapons of mass destruction. I said right away to everybody I knew, it's bullshit. They don't have weapons of mass destruction. However, I will say what I got right is that, but I will admit what I got wrong. I'll tell you what I got wrong. I said, there's no way they got weapons of mass destruction. They just came out with that to sell it to us because they've been trying to sell it to us and they can't. And suddenly they know that. Bullshit. But I did say this to everybody. When they get there, they'd be imbeciles if they didn't plant them. And they're so arrogant, though, that they did not care after they got the okay and went in. By the time they were there a few years, they figured, you know what, we do what we want anyway. And they never even had like, somebody should have said, well, at least let's pretend. At least let's go.
I agree. Why didn't they just have some? And they kind of did say that because they'll tell you, if you talk to some people, they'll be like, well, we did find some chemical weapons and, you know, this and that. But they told us that they had nuclear weapons facilities there that they couldn't inspect, and that Saddam Hussein was going to blow us up, and that he had nothing to do with the terrorism. Well, so we know the government, they lied to us. So they lied about 9/11. There's a lot of, you know, weird stories with JFK. So why do they take him out? So let's go back to you, Lou, before you go, because I know you're very busy, but everybody should go get the book, Borgata. It's very interesting. You dive really deep into that. But before you go, I want to hear some of your stories. Now, you just said how you got connected with the Gotti family, Peter Gotti, but how did you get involved with the Gambino family from boosting these cars? You know, can you go into that? Can you elaborate to where you got locked up?
I mean, I'm locked up.
Because I just want to get to this hardened criminal thing, this Richie thing. I know you probably have to go soon, but that story was just so great that you said on Flag TV. Not great in a good way, but interesting.
Oh, so no, Richie was a good guy. Richie, I liked him as a person. I will say that. When I have a different judgment of people, when you're in that life and you're involved in it, you don't judge people for what they do to others. You judge them for what they do to you and how you interact with them and if you get along with them. Because there could be a guy in your family who's killing 50 people, but he's doing it for your family, for your Borgata. You know, when you get along with him, you might play cards with the guy. You might, you know, so I had a different standard then. Now I'd be like, all right, you know, you don't want to hang out with killers. It's, you know, it's different now. I'm a regular citizen now. But when you're involved in that life, you judge people differently. So there was a guy, I got very close with him. He was with the Lucchese family. He clipped a lot of people. He was a really good guy in terms of like,
his social, yeah. I mean, when you say good guy, he was a friendly guy, because it doesn't sound like that good of a guy. And you said this earlier, that they killed too many people, that you never really wanted to do that. That was the last resort for you, and that for these guys were doing it almost for sport.
Yeah. So when I say a good guy, I'm going back then. I don't mean now. Like, I wouldn't judge him as a good guy now. I'm a different person now. But back then, I still liked him. I could still say to you, I liked him as a person. But then I judged him as a really, really like a friend. He was a friend. And that was when we were in the penitentiary together. He was in a different block, a housing block, where they put a lot of different people like who had issues in the prison. And I asked what he's doing in there. I didn't understand it. And they said that, well, that was the thing you're talking about, the penis, that I knew about. That he could.
Well, yeah, okay, wait, real quick. No, let me just preface this, guys. So Lou was on Vlad TV. It's a great interview. Everybody needs to go watch that one as well. You know, Lou had a great sit down, and Vlad does good interviews. But that these people would do insane things. And one thing this Richie guy did was he took a blowtorch and he removed a man's genitals. And you said that they used to do it to people's elbows and knees, and they took it a little too far. But then on top of that, inside the jail, you wondered why this guy was in a different unit, and it was because he ate somebody's brains. Is that, can you tell us that?
Which surprised me even too. Yeah, which surprised me. I found out that.
Well, how did he eat his brains? Was he inside the jail? He beat somebody up?
I heard that he whacked somebody and he tasted the guy's brains. He dipped his fingers in the red cauliflower, you know, and he touched it to his lips. I don't know. I wasn't.
And this is a guy that you were friends with and hung out with, and you wouldn't have expected him to act like this, or we
went to the town hall every day. Even after that, I ate with him after that too. I just had to block that out of my mind. You know,
Was he a picky eater, or would he eat anything? I mean, obviously he's not.
After that, if I saw him eating anything that wasn't well done, I asked him if maybe you should send it back to the kitchen. But I'm joking. You can't do that in jail. You eat what they give you. He was a good guy. I don't like to talk bad about him. I got caught off guard with that question by Vlad. So
that question was crazy. That clip is awesome.
I wasn't expecting that. So, but Richie was a good guy. Like I said, back then, he was a good guy who I felt like was loyal to his friends. He would kill for you. If you said to him in the middle of the night, you called him up and he says, "Hey, Richie, these 4 guys just raped my daughter. And, you know, they're all armed and, you know, I know where they hang out or whatever." He'll say, "Sit there. I'm on my way." And he would really clip all 4 of them that night. You know what I mean? So, like, would you say the next day he was a good guy? If you're his friend, you'd say, yeah, you know, you judge him as a good guy. He's not killing you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
that sounds like a loyal soldier. It sounds like a loyal solder. You know, that's the guy you'd want to be in a foxhole with type guy.
But what you said was right, too, by the way. There was too much killing. I realized if a guy used to disappear, a guy gets clipped or he's gone, you don't see him no more, you don't ask questions. It's not your business. And at some point or another, I'm in jail with everybody. So we're all talking about our indictments. And I just got robberies. I got the heists and hijackings. But a lot of these guys got a lot of murders. And I'm okay with, I hung out with them on the street. I'm all right with them in jail. But now they're talking about, can you help me? Because I'm studying law at some point, right? I'm pretty much a legal eagle. Can you help me with my case? And I'm reading cases and I'm trying to help people get relief in the courts. And I'm learning that a lot of guys were killed for greed. And it was wrong, because I felt like if you break the rules, just like if you belong to the United States, and if you decide you're going to sell nuclear secrets to Iran and you end up in the electric chair, come on. That's the rules of the country. That's how, if the country decides they're going to whack you, because the American people are fine with that. If you committed high treason like that, for the most part, if you commit high treason, you sell nuclear secrets, or if you're in the military and you're in the middle of a war, let's say you're in World War II, you get taken by the Germans in Normandy, and you say, "This is where my entire platoon is. Go get them." And they find you.
Certain circumstances. Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah.
Okay, so you got rules. You understand these rules going in. But I understood the rules to be, if you break the rules, if you fool around with somebody's wife, if you steal from somebody, if you become a rat, if you're snitching, if you're a confidential informant, these are rules. You're going to die. You're going to go. If you sell child porn, somebody was selling child porn once, and his skipper told him
death penalty.
He says, "Look, you're going to stop selling child." And the guy loved him. His skipper loved him. His captain. He goes, "Look, you're either going to stop selling child porn, or you're going to die. Those are your two options." And the guy goes, "But it's making a ton of money." He goes, "You're going to stop selling it, or you're going to die." So there's rules. We understand.
What happened to the guy? Did he stop or did he die?
He stopped, but he got killed for something else because he broke other rules.
Well, good for that.
Yeah. He deserved to die. They shouldn't have even allowed him once he did
and
that.
This is all in the video game for YouTube that's watching this. This is a book, a Borgata. We're talking about history, and we don't want anybody or anything bad to happen to anybody anywhere ever. So let's wrap things up, man. It's been such a great conversation, Lou. You know, I really appreciate you making time. But real quick, I want to wrap everything up kind of neatly. So you talk about Borgata, and you do glamorize this La Casa Nostra, the mob life, and you and I both know it's not glamorous at all. And there was a point where you were even wanted to end your life because of this. So I guess, can you explain why it is such a beautiful, cool thing that we love The Sopranos, but at the same time it's a horrible, dark thing that the dichotomy of that.
So the first thing I was talking about was, like, I understood, like, you die for the rules, but then I understood that people were dying for other things, for greed, because somebody wanted their money, somebody wanted their policy bank, their gambling book, their wife, their girlfriend, and that was despicable to me. So I said, "Wow, I'm in a snake pit. You don't kill people for that. You couldn't give me $1 trillion to kill somebody. If you called me in the middle of the night and you said your daughter was raped, I'm going to tell you right now, I could kill the guy. I have no problem.
If it's a pedophile, there's certain things, where you'd be so mad, but for money, for gambling debt, it would not be
but if you called me
decision.
But if you called me and you told me your neighbor's worth $1 trillion and we could own everything he has if we kill him tonight, I would tell you you're out of your mind. I would talk, not only not do it, but I would talk you out of it and say, "What are you, an animal? You don't kill people for money. You go out and you make money. Go make your own money. Don't kill somebody for money." So I despise them for that. So I just want to make it clear, I never glamorized the mob. This is as dirty as it gets. It's all the dirt and grime. Clash of Titans is when they go at each other. Even Rise of Empire, they're killing each other left and right. And I give it like it is. I tell it like it is. It's not glamorous. Martin Scorsese makes it glamorous looking and his dirty.
Yeah. So I misspoke saying you glamorize it. I apologize for that. But okay. Yeah. And then actually last question, or maybe there's two more, but gay guys. I love that Vito Spatafora and The Sopranos, becomes gay as a runaway. Is that true? And there's a rumor that when you're in prison, if you do some gay stuff, you're not, that's okay. But outside of prison, you can't do gay stuff.
Okay in jail either. No.
Even in jail, it's not okay.
No way.
Okay.
I mean, it's a no. You're just not allowed. Now,
it's a no-go.
That doesn't mean you're not. I have dear friends that are gay. I don't care what they do. But if you're part of the thing, that's just a no. You get caught, you're dead. So now I'm going to tell you about the guy Vito from Sopranos, since you mentioned him. A friend of mine was a wise guy with the Bonanno family. So he's at a wedding with a bunch of other wise guys, and the guy Vito's at the bar. He happened to be at the wedding. The actor. Yeah, I forget his name. They told him, "Get out of here, get the F out of here. We'll kill you." So when he tells me they threw him out of the wedding, I go, "What are you throwing him out? He's acting."
These guys are such goombas or whatever they're called. They're kicking out an actor, a famous actor. I mean, come on.
He's an F in this. He's an F in that. I go, "What's wrong with you?" So once again, too, I got to tell you, do what you want to do. I don't care. I have dear friends that are gay, dear friends that are lesbian. I don't care what they do. They don't care what I do. So I'm fine with that. But in the mob, you cannot be gay. And it was to such an extent that they threw out the actor. They told him, "Get the F out of the wedding or we'll kill you." And
people might not know this. If you didn't see The Sopranos, there's a guy who's like he became one of the top guys for Tony Soprano in The Sopranos. And then it finds out in the series that he's homosexual and he has to run away. And Tony, the whole time, because he's one of his top guys, is like, "I don't want to take him out." Tony doesn't want to take him out. Tony doesn't. There's another competing boss that takes him out because he's fooling around with that guy's sister. He's married to this guy's sister. So my point is, it is kind of this weird thing where it's like, you don't hate him because he is that lifestyle. There's some people in the chat that do feel like they hate that lifestyle. But what I'm saying is they're in this situation where you just can't in this family you cannot play with guys.
The mob is very like the mob. I wrote about this in Mob Rules. My last book before this trilogy was called Mob Rules: What the Mafia Can Teach Legitimate Businessman. It's an international bestseller in 20 languages. And what I write about is the mob. We had a policy. I took over. A lot of people don't like that lifestyle. That's fine. I'm not. Look, I never had a gay thought in my life. I'm 100% straight male, heterosexual. So I just want to make that clear. Never had a gay thought in my life. Did 8.5 years in jail. Never gave it a thought. Never one did nothing. However, I have no problem with gays. The guy who helped me get my first book deal is gay. He's a great guy. I love him. So I have no problem. You do what you do. I do what I do. I think most Americans are on that same page. We took over a gay club in Manhattan when I was on the street. It was 24th between 5th and 6th. We took over. It was a rocking club. The guys who gave us the keys when we took it over, they said, look, I'm going to tell you right now, your best night is gay night. Don't give it up. They spend money and they don't fight. Guys get into
and they buy drugs. They buy the drugs because that's what I'm just saying. You know, is that what the mob just became, a drug dealing business? Though I mean,
nowadays,
just
a lot of drugs. What they do is they don't deal the drugs a lot themselves anymore, but they back people who they'll give you like 100,000. The guy goes and buys a couple of kilos, and then they give him a return on his money, so they could say, "I'm not dealing drugs." You understand?
Well,
That's
I know they're kind of I mean, they're just kind of middlemaning it, I guess you could argue. But this is what I don't understand about the drug trade now. You go to the Philadelphia, the Kensington area, the fentanyl is like $1. You know, China is the one that's making it in Mexico, and the cartel's making all the money. So, I mean, I'm sure the cartel has to work with the modern day mob, but the modern day mob does not exist anymore, correct? I mean, not like it used to.
Well, the third volume of my trilogy is Autumn of Empire because it's pretty much done. By the time the third volume comes out, which is due out the end of this year, the beginning of next, by the time the third volume comes out, it's pretty much over. There's not much left. They lost a lot of the unions. You know, the mob, when I wrote Rise of Empire, the first volume, I go through how they infiltrated all the labor unions in America and how they really, really dug deep into the industries and how they did it step by step, how they bought off the politicians. It's all in there. Clash of Titans is the big clash between the Kennedy family especially, but there's other stuff in there too. Mob wars, mob rebellions, civil wars, it's all in there. Autumn of Empire, it's pretty much done. They lose a lot of the unions. For example, a friend of mine ran the garbage on Long Island. He controlled all of the garbage pickup on Long Island. At some point or another, they told him, look, BFI Waste is coming in. I think it was BFI. One of the waste companies is coming in. The government told him, they're going to buy you out. We want you out. You're going. If you sell, you won't have a problem. If you don't, we're going to put you away for the rest of your life. He took, I think, like $50 million in stock. That turned out to be $150 million because it tripled. And he walked away from the garbage industry. Now, who runs the garbage industry, though? I'm going to tell you, this is despicable, too, if you think about it. So, and this is all in volume 3. So he used to run the garbage industry, but when he ran
the sanitation business for people playing at home, that you know, they're in the sanitation business, is what they call it.
Sanitation. So when he ran the garbage industry, they had like a cartel, and they did. But basically, like, let's say I had 3 trucks, and me and 2 of my brothers, we drive our own trucks, and that's our little company. It's called, Ferrante Brothers. Let's say you got it, Stein Brothers. You and your brother, you have 4 trucks, 2 for you, 2 for
we pick up some neighborhoods and we go pick up the garbage.
Right. So the mob would tell me and you, let's say, they would say, look, hey guys, like my friend who ran it in Long Island, he would say to us if we wanted to have a garbage company, these are your territories. You can't go outside your territories. And you can't charge below this because we keep with their price controlling. They set the price. You can't go and tell your guy, I'm going to pick up for $3 a ton if I'm telling you I'm picking up for $4 a ton. What are you doing? Undercutting me? What are you, a smart ass? So they would not want that. So it was a cartel. However, they allowed all the mom and pop companies to always exist. So a lot of different people made good money. A lot of them became millionaires. Little guys became millionaires because they had a few trucks, maybe a yard, and you're doing it over and over every day, right? So you're making money. You're doing pretty good. They just didn't want you going, don't step into Alex's territory. Alex, don't go knock on Lou's guy's door. So they kept it controlled. That's all they did. When the big corporations came around and kicked the mob out, They bought up or crushed all the small guys. Now it's one big company. You think that's better? I don't know. Coin flip for me.
Probably not. I would say no, because that's globalism. I mean, obviously, the trash is probably way worse now.
Yep.
I mean, I would
Well,
say.
now I got a French company that picks up my trash. I need a French company to pay. I'd rather have an Italian who's at least Italian American.
Yeah.
Like I got now somebody in Paris is making the money for my trash. And if
they sold all the parking meters in Chicago to Saudi Arabia.
It's all wrong. It's all wrong. So you know who the mafia is
in the 90s, but did you know about this? I'm saying they sold all their parking meters, and now it's generated like $100 billion or something for Saudi Arabia. Everybody needs to go look at it. These people, the government, whether it's small, big, they're all incompetent when it comes to this.
No, the government, let me say it really clear. The government is the mafia. That's your mafia. The government is the mafia today. The government used to work with the mafia. Now they don't need the mafia. The government is the mafia. The government, Meyer Lansky, when he was brought before the Kefauver Committee in the 1950s, he said to Estes Kefauver, Senator Estes Kefauver out of Tennessee, he eventually ran for the Democratic nominee. He became a Democratic nominee for president, didn't make it. But Senator Estes Kefauver went and subpoenaed all the mob guys across the country. And when he got Lansky in front of him, Lansky said to him on the side, he goes, you know what your problem is, I think, with us? He says, us Jews and Italians. He goes, it's not that we control gambling and that bothers you. It bothers you that you don't control it. And one day I'm sure you will. And that's what happened. The government eventually controls the gambling. How come the mob can't? You're not allowed. You get pinched, right? You know how many friends I know that went away for gambling? But now you could go
anywhere. You can do it online. All these corporations dominate. Hey, Lou, and I don't want to take this interview because it's been so great. I know I got to let you go, but I have to say this because I get a lot of people say anti-Semitism, this and that. Now. I'm
a convert to Judaism.
Okay. Well, but Lou, so you're going to understand this, but so you understand that people, they don't like, there's a lot of anti-Semitism. That's a real thing, and some of my fans, no, it's not good, but there's going to be people that say, a lot of the mafia is actually run by the Jewish mafia. So what is the influence of Jewish mafia and Italian mafia?
Okay,
not anymore. But what's the difference? Can you tell us, or was it kind of the same thing? What's the Jewish mafia? What's the Italian mafia?
I urge anybody who wants to learn about the Jews and Italians together to read Volume 1, because I go deep into the relationship, better than anybody's ever done it before, with the Jews and the Italians. Now, the Jews were very close with the Italians in the 1930s and the 1940s and the 1950s. Now, let's not forget, just so I bring everybody up to date, the Jews were having a hard time in this country. They were discriminated against. They weren't allowed in golf clubs. They weren't allowed in certain buildings, and they weren't allowed here. They couldn't buy.
Henry Ford did not like them. Henry Ford had a book called The International Jew. Henry Ford, yeah.
So now, with all the anti-Semitism that existed, institutional and societal, with all the anti-Semitism that existed, the Jews really didn't have a lot of opportunities in the beginning. When this anti-Semitism started to erode in this country, and we're a great country, we always fix ourselves. We always fix our problems. If there's discrimination, if there's hate, it always corrects itself. If the people do a good job in generational. When Italians came here, we were called wops, greaseballs, guineas, pizza ends. Pizza NIGGASs. We were called every horrible name you could think of. And within generations, nobody has a problem with Italians because my grandparents worked hard to make a better life for my parents. And my parents, hey, look, my parents blew it a little with me, but for the most part, my parents did their best to raise me right. And that's why I came around in the end. So the Jews were faced with a lot of anti-Semitism. They had a lack of opportunities. When anti-Semitism eroded, and those opportunities opened up for them in the overworld, they left the underworld in droves. So around 1960, by the time my second volume starts, the Jews are pretty much all gone. There's a few left. But just to make it clear, the Jews worked closely with the Italians. And to the Italians' credit, when everybody discriminated against the Jews, the Italians said, hey, you know what? And by the way, just so you people, because I've had anti-Semitic remarks made towards me.
I had people on both sides. I'm just saying, believe it or not,
I'm going to tell you right now, if you're anti-Semitic, go out and learn something. The Jews have fought with one hand tied behind their back for centuries, and they're always getting beat up and killed, and they're always coming back. And there's no plot to take over the world. That's all BS. Okay, nobody, when I converted to Judaism, I'm Sicilian, Barese, and Napolitan. I'm 100% Italian. When I converted to Judaism, nobody said, oh, now you're part of the cabal. Come on, let's go teach you now. This doesn't exist, okay? The Jews are smart. They're very,
They are smart. They're very smart.
through.
Listen, we don't have to get into too deep in the woods of it, Lou. No, we get it. That's not a good mindset to hate somebody based on any sort of ethnicity, race, religion.
Exactly. That's all I.
But some stereotypes are true and funny to make fun of. But other than that, hate is bad. You know,
I make fun of everybody. I hate that we can't joke about people anymore. I hate that, and I still do with my friends. We make fun of ourselves. I like a world where there's humor. But what I'm just saying is the real deal, learn. That's all. Learn. When somebody said, I heard a guy one time on one of the shows on, I think it was maybe Piers Morgan. The guy goes, the Jews killed Kennedy. I go,
well, Piers has a lot of those debates. That's why people like that.
He goes, the Jews killed Kennedy. I go, what did that guy just say? I got to rewind that.
Well, but the conspiracy behind that is because he was trying to make Israel. I'm not saying that this is why, but there's a connection that he wanted them to register as a foreign, the FARO Act, register as a foreign agent. AIPAC was
okay, but
is that not true? I see that might not be true. They say AIPAC wasn't even created yet. So, but that's what they think, or that's what they say.
Let me just make a blanket statement. The Jews I did 10 years of research, 18 hours a day, 6 days a week. The Jews had nothing to do with the death of Kennedy. The guy's premise was, when he was asked, how could you say that? Why would you say that? He goes, Jack Ruby was a Jew. Jack Ruby was.
He was. Rubenstein.
Yes, exactly. But he killed Oswald, number one. He didn't kill Kennedy. That's number one. Number two is he was working for the mob, the Italian mob. And the Italian mob was working with rogue CIA agents, maybe the Secret Service, and Cuban militants. So there's one Jew in there. There's one Jew. So how has it become? And he's the guy who takes the fall. He's the big idiot in the conspiracy, not the mastermind like the Wizard of Oz behind the thing going, if the Jews were pulling the strings, you think they'd send Ruby in to shoot him? Let's send Jack Rubenstein in to shoot Oswald. That'll really make it that we could really hide well with Rubenstein out there in the front. Come on.
I know, but I'm once again, now it seems like we're debating, and I'm not debating you. But
I'm not debating you.
This is the other thing they say. But this, Lou. This is the other thing they say when this argument comes up. They say, well, and and we have to just be, if we're just going to be intellectually honest, that he wanted to inspect Israel's nuclear power, and that Israel did misrepresent what sort of nuclear technology that they had and how they got uranium. That there was some funny business with that, and I think Israel admits that they misrepresented.
You mean the guy who went to jail for life here, who stole?
Yeah. Well, what I'm just saying. They said they didn't have uranium. They said they didn't have this technology. They did at the end of the day. And that's what that was.
Every nation lies.
Of course. It's not, yes, and that's
every nation lies. The United States lies all day. So does Germany, France, England.
America's the biggest liar. No, I'm with you. I'm just saying that's what in those debates. I see it all because I'm a conspiracy theorist, and I think it's never just one evil person. It's multinational corporations versus governments, and there's just a lot of moving parts when it comes to any conspiracy. But usually, the official story is not the correct story. That's where I'm at. It's like I don't always know what the truth is, but I usually know the official story. There's something probably that they're not telling us because there's levels.
I'm the first one to say, look, Israel's a state. I'm not going to believe everything they say. I'm just against anti-Semitism or anti-Israel just for the fact that I don't like Jews.
I am too. Yeah, I'm against all that. I'm against any sort of hate like that.
Yeah, but if you have a problem, if you say this country lied or that country lied, every country lies. I get it. Yeah, I mean that's like oh, I can't believe the mob boss lied. Of course, the mob boss lies. Everybody lies.
Okay, this is, and I do have to let you go, but you wrote a rap song about John Gotti. So who is, of all the mob stuff, let's glamorize it for 1 second. Your book, everybody can see about the horrible stuff. Yeah, I love The Sopranos. It's my favorite show. What was the peak, and who is the greatest representation of, the mafia, in your opinion? Who's on the Mount Rushmore of the mafia?
In my time, Vincent Cingiganti, who used to wander the streets in a bathrobe. I used to stay at his house. I was very close with his family. So he had a house. He used to wander the streets in a bathrobe in Manhattan on the West Side. But he had a family. His family lived in Old Tappan, New Jersey. and I used to stay at the house in Old Tapan with the family, and he was the epitome of a mob boss on the street. He was looked up with the utmost respect. Everybody had respect for him more than any other boss because he ran the family old school. If you were to die in his family, you had it coming. It wasn't like what I was telling you happened in other families where a lot of greed and other stuff like that. But Vincent Chinjigan,
This guy,
yeah,
he was the guy.
he was the deal.
This
He
guy.
was the real deal. Yeah, he was the real deal.
Professional boxer. Did he ever? Do you think he threw any matches ever?
You know, well, Tommy Eboli, when Italians were discriminated against, they used to use Irish names. So Tommy Eboli used to go by the name Tommy Ryan when he was in the fight game. And yeah, they were involved in crooked fights, and obviously, but he was the real deal. He eventually went away. The guy who put him away, if I'm not mistaken, was Andrew Weissman, the same guy who did the Russian collusion thing. So, you know, he played dirty, I got to tell you, because Chin Sitner went away, and it wasn't a good case. I studied the case. They railroaded him. And did he deserve to go away? Yes, of course. But by the structure of justice that we have in America, I mean, you know, that's when I have a problem with the justice system if they go outside the law to put you away if you're unlawful.
Which they do. They do. Entrapment happens every day. Even the damn speed entrapment, I think, should be illegal. Yeah, they trap us all the time, you know.
Yeah, put me away the right way, and I'm fine with you. I tip my hat to you. If you get me square, you know, fair and square, I'm fine with that. You know, that's how I felt, and I still feel that way about the justice system. If you do it right, you got a guy who's real. If you dummy up a case, dummy up charges because you don't like him or you know he did something and you just can't prove it, I don't believe in that. And that's what I felt they did with Chin. Yeah.
Yeah, I even think white collar stuff, they should really, you know, if it's really bad, I guess you send a guy to jail. But I think a lot of our punishment is cruel and unusual. Like, you know, if we actually had a system that actually wanted to rehabilitate people, we would go at it a different way, especially young black men. I think and this people are going to say it's crazy, but you look it up, like 70% of adult male black men either have a felony conviction or a felony charge on their record. So it's like, you know, I just think our justice system is actually, I think it's a little racist systemically. You know, even black people charged with the same crime as white people get a longer sentence, and people say it's because socioeconomic issues that they're not as rich, which is probably true. My point is, I just don't like our judicial system. It's not about actually rehabilitating people. It's about being punitive, and people, I don't think, learn their lesson that way. I don't think that's the way human beings actually learn their lesson. We need to be certain criminals, throw the book at them. People that make mistakes, shoplifting or something like that, I don't, you know, you ruin their life by not letting them get a job in the future.
I agree. Alex, I'm going to throw this out on your show. I tried to get in touch with the Trump administration when they were doing prison reform because I wanted to be part of it desperately. And I'm going to tell you, I have ideas with regard to criminal reform that would help everybody, black, white, Asian, it doesn't matter.
Would it save them money? No, because, you know, I'm friends with Laura Trump is a friend of mine. I'm very thankful, but you have been trying to get in contact with them. But see, that's the thing. That's the other thing is a lot of this prison stuff is a bipartisan thing, and they still don't get it right. You know, they even have both sides on it.
They were getting like, they were talking to like rappers or something. I remember reading like, what's her name? Ivana's husband, Jared Kushner's talking to like a rapper. He's asking a rapper like how to reform the justice system. I'm going, this guy, who's locked up 3 times for stealing a bicycle. I've been in state, county, and federal jail. I faced the rest of my life. I spent 3 years in a holdover. I spent 8.5 years in a maximum security penitentiary. I know what prison is like. I've been in medium and I've been in high. I've helped other people. I studied the law. I reversed my own case pro se with the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. I know the law from both sides. When you talk to a lawyer or a judge and they think they know the law, take off that robe and get in my jumpsuit and then tell me you know the law. Put a number on your back. Go spend the night in a cell with me. Then tell me you know the law. You don't know the law till you suffer at the hands of the law. That's when you really learn the law. So I learned the law. And having said that, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm no bleeding heart who thinks that the prison should be opened and everybody should get out. 98% of the people in jail belong there. There are a few who are innocent, and we need a justice system that protects those. There are a lot who were railroaded. So even though they're guilty and they belong there, I don't believe they were put there correctly. So there's a lot of things that you could do to reform the justice system. I was once involved in a panel.
Especially drug stuff. You have to admit, Lou, too, that, with this drug stuff, people are addicted to drugs, you ruin their life. I mean, that's only going to make them more addicted to drugs because you go to prison, there's drugs in there. So it's just, it's not, I mean, it's really bad.
You get high, you just nailed it. There's guys who get heroin on the visit. They're flying all over the place. There's also, too, a lot of people with different degrees, different levels of mental illness. I have a whole shelf, one of these shelves behind me by the desk chair. By the way, that's my George Washington. That's from the 1800s.
That's awesome.
That thing's twice the size of me. It's set back a little. You can't see how big it is. That the different levels of mental illness should be treated differently. They throw them all in one warehouse, and then a lot of people are taken advantage of in jail. I've seen this. So, I mean, this is like, I feel like you need to reform the justice system from the start to the finish. And I mean, from the day you get a handcuff put on your wrist, the entire court system, not just the penal system, but the court system. I'm going to tell you how crazy America is too, and why we just lock people up. And a lot of times it's not done correctly. And a lot of innocent
because we have a private prison industry. You're going to say that? That's just stupid that we even have that. I mean, that's ridiculous.
When I got locked up in 1994, I went through the R&D section where when you first get locked up, you lose your suit, your clothes, your wallet, your watch, and you put on a jumpsuit. So they had a map of the country there, and they had a few pegs here and there for the federal penal system. And I'm like, oh, okay, a couple there in the Northeast, a couple there in the Midwest, a couple there on the East Coast. Okay. I went back when I won my appeal 6.5 years later. I go back in through this 6.5 years, so people know I had to do another 2 in the state after that. I did a total of 8.5, but I won my federal appeal after 6.5, just to be clear. I don't lie. Everything is in the record, just so people, like, when they leave comments or whatever, I never lie. It's all in the record. This is all in the record. When I went back through there, when I won my appeal 6.5 years later, I went through the same R&D room because I'm coming back down on the appeal to go back to court. And I see the map, and it's covered with tax. Covered. Like they just been throwing tax at it since I last seen it. And I go, what the F is this? They're locking up the whole country. Now, listen, like, I'm the first one to say, if you belong in jail, lock them up. I'm pro-cop. I belonged in jail. I'm the first one to admit I belonged in jail. I'm not telling you, I never told anybody I was innocent. One of the big reasons I changed was because I was the guy who admitted it when I was in there. I used to go to guys, you're innocent? Give me a break. I saw your indictment. Stop lying to yourself. Realize it. Turn your life around. So that's what I did. And I never did it by ratting. I wouldn't rat on nobody. I never cooperated. Never even for like a minute, never for a word, nothing. Nobody. I was responsible for myself, and I was going to pay the price. I made that decision from day one, and I never turned back on it. When I won my appeal and I had 2 years left in the state, and they hit me at the parole board, I go, what are you guys hitting me for? I got 6.5 years in. They go, well, too bad. So my lawyer, I go to my lawyer at the time. I'm representing myself, but I still have somebody appointed to me. I go, this prosecutor's an MFer. He goes, well, next time he sees me, the prosecutor who made me do the extra state time, the next time he sees me, he goes, the prosecutor says, if you're willing to talk, he's willing to listen. He could get you out of the last 2 years, because they hit me for 2 years. They hit me with a deuce at the
So he says, if you turn witness, we'll let you out early.
We're still willing to listen, even years later, because they knew I had a lot to say about a lot of people. If I wanted,
you know where the bodies are buried. You know where this is. Yeah.
Well, listen, if I didn't rat then when the time was in front of me, I sure as hell ain't ratting when most of the time's behind me. I said, I'll go do my time. And it was a blessing in disguise, because you know what? I whipped out the books and I started reading, and I got back into my program again, and I did another 2 years of educating myself. So I wouldn't be the writer I am today if I didn't educate myself in a prison cell all those years. But anyway, reform. If the Trump administration takes another stab at prison reform, do me a favor, shout out to Laura Trump. And
I'm going to give a shout out, Lou. And everybody needs to go pick up Borgata. Where can they get this, Lou?
It's everywhere. It's Barnes & Noble. You can
Amazon,
go on
Barnes & everywhere. Okay.
Everywhere online, any store. You can get it everywhere. It's through Pegasus, Simon & Schuster. Yeah.
Well, Lou, you're an interesting man. I really appreciate you making time. I'm sure after this, we'll probably want a part two. I'll hit you up in a couple months, and I'll let you know what if I talk to Laura. Like I said, once I, hear some scuttlebutt,
If
Lou.
they do that again, you never know. Yeah.
You never know, but you are going to be on the short list of people that I recommend and talk to. You hit me up anytime, anything I can do to help. The chat loved you, and everything we said. And for the YouTube censors, we don't want anybody to ever get hurt. This is talking about old crime. I just sometimes the censorship they might say, oh, what is there glamorizing this? We don't glamorize any of this.
Nope, I'm not involved in crime. I haven't been in years. I got out in 2003. I'm home 20 years. I've never committed another crime. I don't advocate crime. And I've done a great deal to promote literacy, to help criminals, ex-criminals, ex-convicts. I was given an award at number 10 Downing Street by the Prime Minister. So,
wow. Yeah, for what you did for helping out criminals?
Well, they used to call me up and they used to go, look, will you help they wanted me to promote literacy in the prisons and with youth in England. So I would keep going over. And at some point or another, I get a phone call and they said, the Prime Minister's giving you an award at Downing Street for all the work you did to promote literacy in England. So look, that's
pretty strong from the Gotti family to getting an award from the royal family. It doesn't get more interesting than that.
Hey, Alex, I'll leave it at this. When I walk up to Downing Street, you have the big number 10 door there. So I walk up to Downing Street, you got to go through the thing and they're searching me and everything. And I go, I hope they do this with everybody. And this just ain't for me. Because it's like practically I was going into a prison.
You're going into their house, right? Or Downing Street. That's like their main building. I mean, I've been by it near Big Ben. I've been downtown London. It's a great place. Well, Lou, I'm happy that you're rehabilitated. Now you're a best-selling author. I just really appreciate you talking about this because you're one of the last few, like you said. Now it's kind of the mob life is dying out, and now the casinos are owned by corporations. We need historians like you to kind of tell about a time when the world was a different place and ran by gangsters from Sicily. Oh, actually, this is what I would say. Are Sicilians really black? Are you really a black man?
Well, so my grandmother, when my grandmother used to pick up my mother, my mother said that the girls in school used to say, there's a black woman here to pick you up. Because my grandmother was.
Because your grandmother's that tan? Your grandmother's that tan.
Yeah. If you go on my website, lewisferrante.com, I'm bald now. But if you go on my website, lewisferrante.com, I mean, I passed when I was a kid. So
you're a black guy. So you just confirmed it. If you're Italian, you are a little bit African American.
I had an afro like this when I was a kid. I don't know where I got an afro from.
This will probably go viral now, Lou. The NAACP is going to come after you because you just said that your grandmother was so dark. The students thought she was.
My mother told me. My mother told me the kids used to say, "There's a black woman here to pick you up," and it was her mother. And my mother always taught me, though. My mother taught me my whole life that we believed. I dated African American, Asian American.
No, you didn't. Tony Soprano, you can't date
I brought every girl in the world home, and my parents were fine with them all. I grew up in a melting pot, Queens.
Yeah, your parents were cool. Hey, why did all those bosses have gumads? I feel like that was always their downfall too. They always have a side woman. Was that?
They want a wife that's, puts on an apron and cooks dinner in the kitchen and takes care of the family, and they want a gumata who does all the other things that, the dirty little secrets behind closed doors. So that's basically where the gumata came from. Yeah.
Gumad, I feel like that gets them all in trouble. They all get the gumad, and that's when maybe I'm wrong. You know better than me.
No, the guy, I'll tell you a story. I walked into a restaurant once so little Peter was cheating on his girlfriend, and we walked into an Italian restaurant. I had a girl. He was with his girl. We walked into an Italian restaurant, and he did a U-turn. He goes, "Let's get out of here." I go, "We didn't even get in here." He goes, "No, my father's in the back with his gumata. I can't stay here." So we made a beeline out. Yeah, we got the hell out of there. So he was with that girl like 30 years, the father. And, and the kid was already.
The gumad became like a wife, like a second wife to these guys. That's crazy. I can't believe that of the Italian culture. That's one of the craziest things of their culture that I'm like, I can't believe that ever.
Not everybody. It's a mob thing, no, more so than than an Italian thing. My father was a loyal man. My father was never with anybody but my mother. My father wasn't a criminal. He didn't. He couldn't afford a gumata. They were poor. So it was a different, you know, you got to have a few dollars, right? You got to have a few bucks to have a gumata. You got to put her in an apartment. You got to get her a car. You got to
a fur coat. You got to get her a watch. You got to get her a necklace. There's a lot goes with it.
Yeah, goes with it.
Well,
all right.
Well, you're the man, Lou. Thank you for coming on. And everybody, go pick up Borgata. I'm actually going to add a link to it. Which should be the best website? Should I put the Amazon link or the Barnes & Noble link? What do you recommend?
Oh, we throw up Amazon, I guess.
Okay, I'll throw up the Amazon. That's probably the easiest. Everybody has that. Well, guys, everybody, make sure to go follow Lou. Thank you for coming on. And we will talk again. I'm sure I'll hit you up, and I'll keep you up to date on anything that I hear from the Trump family. Guys, make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Go buy that book. We love you guys. Peace and good night.
Great
I'll see you
work,
tomorrow night.
Keep up.